Matt Aguilar here, and welcome to Comic Book Nation's The Pull List, where we talk all things comics all the time. I have an amazing crew here with me. Of course, the always wonderful Kofi Outlaw is joining me to talk comics. And
What's up?
today we have a very special guest, our first debut, as it were. You were actually used to seeing him in the comments, joining in on our many discussions on the main show. But today we have Damon Gray of Agents of Fandom and Comic Corner joining us to talk comics. What's up, buddy?
How you doing? Happy to be here. This is gonna be great. Happy to talk comics.
Yeah, this is
Awesome.
like
Well,
a
I'm so
fan
glad to
encounter
have
that's
you.
going right, man. Like I feel like, yeah, I can't even
Seriously.
compare what industry I'm thinking of, but like, yes, this is a fan encounter that's going great, and yeah, welcome to the show, man.
Happy to be here. I'm super excited. I picked a great week to come on because man, this week in comics is just stacked.
Yeah, there's too much to fit. We literally had to cut stuff. There's other books that will not make it on the show that I wanted to talk about. But let's do a little shouting out of one of our other projects that we have going on. Of course, we've got many things happening on our Comicbook.com YouTube page, a Comic Book Nation YouTube page. One of them is the awesome Chris Killian handles our That Collectible show, and he's had a chance to really jump in with to just see the amazing collection that Todd McFarlane has at his offices and like everything else that's around his office. If you've seen any of his Instagram videos, you've seen glimpses of that. Chris had a chance to actually be there firsthand and also talk all things comics with Todd. And one of the big things that ties in today is that Spawn number 350 is out on shelves. It's a big deal, number one, because it's I mean, you know, how many books make it to 350, right? That aren't Superman and Batman and Spider-Man, right? So it's a big deal. But also, if you've been keeping up with the books, it's a big deal on numerous fronts. Spawn, there's some new costumes. There's a new ruler of hell. It's a big deal. So number one, check out our show over there if you haven't checked out our main comic book YouTube channel, and check out what Chris has in store for you, and then jump in and dive into the comic and find out what Spawn is doing with the rest of the universe. So lots of stuff going on. We can't contain it to just half an hour talking comics, but we're going to do our best. So moving into let's start with one of the, I think, universally glowing reviews of Ultimate Spider-Man number 1. I feel like it's safe to say that was a pretty well-received book across the board. I didn't really see a ton of naysayers. So people are very anxious to see what number 2 brought. We do get a costume. It is not the costume that everyone is kind of envisioning and what we'll get maybe even the very next issue. But it is kind of a dive into that, seeing this older Peter really start to find out what his powers are capable of, start the superhero journey, which I think is pitch perfect in its execution. I did not expect to find myself being as entertained by Shocker as I was throughout this entire issue. This is just delightful, the back and forth between them. Obviously, we will do mild spoilers. We won't jump into full big spoilers. But I actually don't think there's a ton even in this issue that we really can't touch on. Kofi, what did you think of this? How does it follow up for you to that first one?
Ooh, this was the do or die moment for me for Ultimate Spider-Man, because the first one just got to thrill us with building out the world and the reveal of what that world looks like, and kind of this whole premise of Peter being older, him and MJ being married, having 2 kids, and all of that. We didn't even have to Spider-Man in that one because it was just building up Peter Parker. And so this was the first issue of Spider-Man, of real Spider-Man. And could this book entertain me and draw me in as a Spider-Man book? And I'm happy to report that. Hell yeah, I'm in. Like, yeah, I am in. Like okay, so I'm old enough to have started reading comics around like the mid 1980s, really the 90s, with X-Men and that whole kickoff and the Carnage saga. Like all that is where I begin. But my older brother's 10 years older than me. So I got to read all of his comics from like the 70s, like late 60s into the 70s. I got to read all those like firsthand too. And I always say that like Spider-Man was great when it was a world of kind of street level mystery. There were supervillains, but they were still connected to like the street and the community and like Peter Parker's world. and the mystery of it. Like Green Goblin was a mystery for a long time, not just a weird monster. And who was this person doing this was a big thing. And this book is bringing back all of that. It's bringing back the intrigue of Spider-Man's world, the characters. Like you said, even a character like Shocker gets a whole kind of motif in this book. And it's not just about his goofy powers. He's still just as goofy, but he is an actual character. And already there's a dynamic with this Spider-Man and this Shocker that I love. And you see Peter going through the motions, but you also see how it's very different in this context about like what the effect of him being Spider-Man is. It hasn't gotten too heavy or too serious yet, but there are touches of serious things. Like he realizes that he's making missteps, like oops, and like you get these awkward situations that he doesn't mean to do, and he's got to scramble. So there's still that element of that Peter Parker. I'm barely ahead of life while I'm trying to juggle these two things, and I'm making mistakes and I screw things up type dynamic there. So that was really solid in this, and it made me interested. And I know, how many times have I done a Spider-Man startup, but this feels fun, and I like the world around it. It's already a world that I'm invested in. I'm invested in with people who Wilson Fisk is here, who Uncle Ben is here, who J. Jonah Jameson is here, and like all of those scenes that have nothing to do with Peter or Spider-Man are still really entertaining to me. Also, like, yeah, MJ has never looked better and just seemed cooler than she is as they're finally doing MJ justice. Like this is a modern MJ. She's a kick-ass mom. She's out, holding it down while Peter's holding down the domestic front. I love that dynamic. It's actually real. I can't stand all these stupid memes and parenting memes that are the same old, BS, because I do a lot. I am a Mr. Mom by a crock pot a lot while I'm doing all this. And so like it's good to see Peter and seeing that reflected. And so like all sides of this book are cooking for me, man. And the artwork is cooking, and I'm excited to see how we're getting to even more traditional Spider-Man. But like the dialogue is there. You can tell, Hickman knows Spider-Man. The wisecracking him and Shocker's interactions alone are just so funny. I enjoyed it.
Damon, what you thinking?
Man, that first issue I really enjoyed. The ending of that first issue, I wanted it to be more grounded than it was, and this is the grounded issue that I was looking for. This is Spider-Man at its best. Like you mentioned, Kofi, the wisecracking. Like this is Spider-Man against his first villain, and he's screwing up, and it's hilarious. This just feels. It really truly feels like, oh yeah, this is Spider-Man. This is kind of like the Peter Parker I've been missing for a hot minute and from some other books, and it's weirdly fresh, but at the same time nostalgic. It's just right in so many ways, and you get to see like this Peter, the secrets he has to hold and how he goes around that and how he is becoming Spider-Man, because he's still not Spider-Man just yet.
Right.
He's just Peter Parker with superpowers, and how he becomes and owns that identity later on. And like when you have Marco Cicchetto on the art, like, I mean, you just like look at this. This is gorgeous, gorgeous artwork. You can't beat it. So the writing is there from Hickman. The art is here. And yeah, I don't love the fact that it's like his first suit's that all black look, but we're gonna get there. And this is a whole journey with Spider-Man. So I dug this. This is incredible.
See, and I love that, but I love it for the homage purposes of, hey, he's got his black suit Spider-Man. We got it out of the way early. There's not going to be the Sam Raimi, like, oh, you never put him in a black suit. He can always point to this and go like, no, I did early. We're not getting any of that symbiote crap for a while. I agree with you. Kofi's probably going to laugh at this, but because anytime kids come into the equation, I turn into just like a big, a ball of parenting emotion. But the way this was done with his daughter, and I won't spoil like all their interactions, but I love that one point of identity is shared, because I just think the way they do it is so it's just in perfectly keeping with what I would expect Peter Parker to be as a parent. juxtapose this to what's happening in Spider-Boy, and like that dude doesn't know how to interact with anybody, or be any kind of mentor to, I mean, my God, a brick. He couldn't mentor a brick in the current universe. But this Peter, yes, this Peter is a parent through and through, and it's just like it's wonderful to see that their interactions are so lovely. And I just, yeah, I dig that we're dealing with, we have the, as Kofi mentioned, we have the fun of learning what your limits to powers are, learning to not be so naive, but it doesn't come necessarily with the like, with the often kind of tropish, you know, oh, I'm a young person and I'm naive. You know, like we it's so easy to drift there. So it's different. It's just not understanding. It's looking for the best in people and sometimes not understanding that. You know what I mean? It's that spun in a different way. No pun intended. So yeah, I think the artwork is beautiful. I agree with Kofi. This is MJ and Peter at their just like their best. This is what I've wanted for years. You know, the marriage and all that stuff. One more day, I won't get into that because I'll go down a rabbit hole, but this is the light at the end of the tunnel. So if I knew I was getting this, I wouldn't have been so mad for so many years. Maybe
I saw what they did at the end there with that one more day too. I was like, oh, you guys.
They know what they're doing. They know what they're doing.
Amazing. Any before we move on to move over to DC, any last notes you wanted to leave on Ultimate?
You guys need to be reading. Don't mess around. Don't miss out. Like, you need to be reading this one.
You're gonna need to go to your comic shop early for it.
Yeah, this is the best Spider-Man we've had in years, and it's the perfect place to jump back into. And it's almost like if you stopped reading Spider-Man years ago and you're an older fan, even like, or even if you're just like anywhere 20 to 40 age fan, like this is a great place to just reconnect with Spider-Man as if time had gone on and Spider-Man got older and now you're jumping back in. So it's a good read.
And I would highly suggest, if you are jumping into this for the first time, you can read Ultimate Spider-Man #1 and go from there, but read the 4-issue mini that kind of sets up this universe, and then the Ultimate Universe single issue that really put into place where all this is, because all these Ultimate issues, these Ultimate series are going to like lead into that ultimate grander storytelling, and things are a little more complicated than this. This is just a different Marvel universe. It's way more complicated than that.
Yeah, no, for sure. This is you need to go out and buy this, and that is a perfect setup for our next book, Wonder Woman, because my God, I just, you know, feel like singing the praises of one book and moving to another, but you know, damn it, if it applies, I'm going to do it. Wonder Woman, Tom King's Wonder Woman run has been just everything I hoped for. And in this issue, this is again, like you're seeing the way the villains are used in this and the way the narration, because again, this all ties into the story that's being told to Trinity from previous issues, right? She's visiting that person in the cell. So this is all being told in the form of flashbacks, but it never really feels like that, because again, this is all new information for Trinity. So it doesn't feel like there's just like a story being told, like, you know, let me tell you the tale of. It doesn't feel like that, like kind of that throwaway thing. It feels real and like you need to pay attention, because that's gonna pay off later. If we've seen anything from Tom King books, we know that like sometimes it's the long game, but that will come into play at some point. But just and then the present tale of Wonder Woman just being, you know, all the things he teased before of just wanting to showcase how strong she is, how much of a, you know, a warrior and also compassionate person she is, and the dichotomy between the two. All of that is here in spades in a big giant superhero fight that looks stunning. Saint-Pierre is just doing some amazing work. I mean, look, the twirl, the old, like the odes to like those old school fans who love that stuff, the invisible jet we've seen in the past, right? The lasso, all that stuff. Every single issue kind of has one of those homages. Here it's the spin, and it's just my God, it's beautiful. So I just love how this book is coming together. We really do kind of come to, this is the end of this current chapter, as it were. And then I was bummed to see that there's going to be a little bit of a break. So that's a bummer for me. But I cannot rave about this book more. Damon, how have you thought about the series to this point, and also this particular issue?
This series has blown me away, like, so much. Daniel Sampere's art is just stunning. It is work that I am willing, and not more than willing, I want to put, like, over my couch. There's some full page spreads in here that is just, like, gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous artwork. If you're not in for this for the story alone, just look at the art. It's incredible. But for the story, this is a very long story that started from the 800 issue with that flashback, I guess the current look of Trinity going to see the Sovereign in a jail cell, and this is him telling her that story, like you mentioned. And Tom King books do get a little wordy sometimes. It's not for everybody. And oftentimes when he's telling these stories, it comes off almost like a very long uh, Shakespearean-esque poetry. It's very majestic, I would say, in the storytelling itself with the narration. It's very narration heavy at times. But if you like that, or if you don't like that, you can get around it. The story that's being put here is incredible. You see some of the best of what, like, Wonder Woman's Rose Gallery is. And that's oftentimes when we talk about, like, the Trinity, like Superman has his rogues gallery, Batman has his rogues gallery, of course, like one of the biggest ones. But a lot of the times it's like, well, what's Wonder Woman's rogues gallery? And here, Tom King and Daniel Sampere is just like, this is it. And we're not even throwing in the heavy, like, we're not even throwing in, like, Cheetah in this. It's everyone else, just to show how good her rogues gallery is and can be. So it's great. Like, the fight sequences in here are so well done. And although it didn't totally connect with some of the fallout from last issue from Diana's side, which is probably my only little, like, where are the Wonder Girls? But other than that, this is amazing. I love this series so much. This is like one of my favorite series from last year counting into this year.
Kofi, how are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of like I said, I mean, I think we're already now confidently in having this in a conversation of Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, in terms of like taking one of DC's female characters and putting a definitive stamp on who she is, and like all the ways in the complexity of the character and the core appeal that has made her last for so long. This book is definitely cooking on that. And this issue, like you said, this was a superhero fight, but it showed kind of, again, why this particular superhero heroine is different, and what is different about her, and kind of even the Sovereign kind of acknowledging like, oh, you forget sometimes that there are these thematic things about, particularly about women. Like, this story is a story about a woman who was pushed down into the dirt and stood back up and pushed back. And we know that story, but we always sometimes forget that Wonder Woman, is that and capable of that. Like, yeah, you can drop something like, mild spoilers, like the Washington Monument on her head, but Diana isn't going to fall. She's going to put up her hands and catch that ish, you know what I mean? And like, and take that pain. And the thing that is just so, by the end of this issue, yeah, like Tom King they get wordy and they get complex, and you're reading almost a novel every time, or a small teleplay or something. But in this one, it was this kind of combination of the Sovereign's like poetic delivery of all this, while the artwork conveys just the brutality of all of it. And just these women get like messed up. I mean, Swan looks like, I mean, she looks dead. I mean, no, those are spoilers. I'm sorry. But like, you know what I mean? There's brutality in this. There is blood everywhere. These women are, I mean, but there's even a whole sequence, wonderful description of when Wonder Woman is going toe to toe with somebody who can actually go toe to toe with Wonder Woman, how long that fight lasts, the level of brutality in it, and the artwork that goes with it is just insane. It's just, yeah. they take any female hero stereotypes you want to talk about get thoroughly worked out in this issue when it comes to action and battle and gravity of battle and the internal heroism that fuels a hero and it makes them do amazing things. So this thing is just fantastic. And it said it was the finale of this, but as for the Wonder Girls and the ending, I think there is some tricky things, and because remember, you have to be careful in this when we're having an unreliable narrator. But he does make the hint that there's a twist to this that we don't see coming yet. And once again, Diana may not. She has more tricks up her sleeve. But there are wonderful features in this. I wrote up the article about getting the Linda Carter twirl in there and all that things. And like I said, we've had every staple of Wonder Woman come under the microscope, from the tiara having an awesome moment in that elevator scene, and the Wonder Jet being a badass in one issue, and all of these things. And as I said, with Daniel's art, like, they are just redefining the scale of Wonder Woman, like how she looks, what an Amazon looks like comparatively. Like, I love the old anime style Wonder Woman with her in the lasso and stuff. I love that art, but like, they never did capture an Amazon. It's like you're talking about like WNBA players to like other women, you know what I mean? Like, size wise. And so they always get the size and the dimensions and all of that. And like, even the Wonder Jet, you think of this dainty little thing. It's like, nah, bro, she's flying like a jet, bro. Like, it looks like a jet with Gatling guns would. Like, there's a size to that. And so they are nailing that scale. And so I love that. And I love that this is going to be, in my mind, like, again, the new portrait of Wonder Woman going forward. So epic things happening here. And I don't see how you could argue that Tom King, at the very least, even if you don't agree with the swing and how it's being done, has like complete reverence for this character and is trying to share that. So good stuff.
Yeah. As someone who still will hold up, Greg Rucka's WW, like Wonder Woman run as like my favorite of all time. And there have been some amazing runs, right? So that's Elite Company. This is very quickly right there with it. And as long as it's one of those things that kind of sticks the landing, obviously we have a lot of questions, especially on the Trinity side and all the future mysteries that we have. One thing I will say is that Tom King, because I totally get it. I'm a huge fan of like Aaron Sorkin style writing. Okay. Inspirational writing, and West Wing and Sunset Strip and all those things. There's a aspirational element to the dialogue. Always has. That's not how people in the White House talk, but that's how I would want people in the White House to talk. And so that's always been something that, like, an element that I love in comics. And King writes the way I want heroes to talk. It's like there's just and the way he sets a scene, the way he paints a scene. There's one where she deflects a blow and someone's been talking about her as far as like, get back in the dirt. And she's like, I wasn't made of dirt. I was made of clay. And then I was made of hope. And like all that stuff. That's how I want that. That makes you feel something, whether you're looking at artwork or not. That I could read that on a page by itself and feel something. And that's what I love about King's work, especially when it's paired with such amazing artwork. It's a wonderful kind of combo there. Also, I will say, completely wanted to mention the second story because there is another delightful one, Trinity growing up story that is in the back, and oh my God, it's precious. I know I'm such a I'm such a father of a daughter. I get it. But it's just adorable. And it's also got such a wonderful Damien moment in it. And I just think he's captured, this book is really also a showcase of like how he's captured them in those brother roles in a way I did not expect. I thought that was going to be good, but I didn't expect this kind of level. So anyway, I know for time's purposes, we got to move to Batman because we've been talking about Joker year one. And this is the conclusion to that arc in Batman 144. We were pretty high on the first two. Kofi, do you think this stuck the landing?
I don't think it doesn't feel like a landing to me. I'm gonna be honest. Like it feels like we are just at this end of this part of the story that fulfills one piece of a thing we've been building, which is how did Joker be, solidify the persona of Joker. We've kind of gotten that filled in, and we've gotten, the mechanics. There was three things this story was doing, right? And so we got the mechanics of what happened in the GCPD with Gordon in it and kind of getting through that whole era in the past. We got how Joker solidified himself as Joker, and we get this kind of story between Batman and Joker where, Batman figures out this question about reflecting on Joker, and kind of that messes with Batman in the end in a very weird way. The ultimate joke between them, so to speak. And I don't know if that hits with the impact unless you kind of go back and read this. This is because of how quickly we are going through this and how much it's covering over time periods. It's been kind of hard to process. I mean, doing a story like this weekly is ambitious in these three different time periods that we're kind of getting it. But credit to Chip Zdarsky for kind of doing it. And yeah, I don't know if it has the impact of a finished story because I feel like there's still more story. I feel like this is a necessary. I mean, what am I saying? I know previews. I know this is a middle component to a story that we're going to continue after this, that we need the implications of all this to help fill in. So it just feels like the middling chapter. And I'm kind of, like I've said in every week that we've done this, I'm interested to see how this stuff lands into the larger canon of DC afterward. Like, how do we then look at Joker, and how does he factor into stories, and what does he mean to Batman after this? But I like, as always with Chip Zdarsky, I'm willing to take on the concepts, but there is always this element of feeling like we are going to keep the can rolling a little bit further before we have to pay the full tab on like settling things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this was a great kind of end to this like mini arc. Um, I I was probably a little not let down. Let down's not the right word, but I was just like it did feel a little abrupt for me. And I kind of almost especially the future stuff, not the stuff like looking in the past and things, but the future stuff kind of ended a little abruptly for me. I would have almost preferred to have maybe kept that going in some respect for a little while longer for to let that breathe, but I still was thoroughly invested, and I'm with you. I mean, I think what Chip has done is plants so many seeds here. If you don't think this Batman run is setting the table for like a decade to come, I mean, they're going to be digging from this and you spinning out stories for a long time, and that's what I think one of the goals is anyway. And to that, it's a success. So it's a great issue, and I really enjoy this spin on the Joker, and I'm curious to see what he does with it when he brings it all together with all the other pieces he's established. Damon and Kofi, I'm not sure if either of you had a chance to read Cemetery Kids Don't Die. Number one. I know Damon did. What did you think of this? Is a brand new series, new issue. What do you think?
I think it's an interesting concept. It's also a concept I feel like we've seen before in some other things that I just like can't wrap my brain around, but it's like, okay, a world that you go to when you sleep that's like a video game and you wake up and it seems like, oh, some of the things that happen in that world happen to you in the real life, right? So if you like that almost Ready Player One-esque type of like thing, then I think you'll like it. The art in here, not for me personally. That's a style thing, but overall, as a concept, I was like, all right, I can get into this. This is decent. It's just it felt like something I've seen before somewhere else.
I got you, and I will always give Zach Thompson books a run. But Kofi, what do you think?
I mean, yeah, this is very like. I mean, I did read it. It's very early 2000s kind of like Existence, or what was I thinking? I mean, it's basically Flatliners, but instead of, putting yourself half dead, you're just going into a gaming world. Severance is another thing that comes to recent memory. Mm-hmm. This idea of like these other selves we have, or even the Rick and Morty Night People episode. Like, there's all these things that we can read that have this concept. I think it's kind of, it's an interesting commentary on kids today, gaming culture, the kind of absorption that we have, and things I'm definitely dealing with in life, like you know, how we get sucked into these worlds, how they can bleed over and affect us in the real world and things like that. And it's a clear metaphor. But yeah, and I'm not taking away the writing, the dialogue between the kid characters and their kind of gaming lingo and all that is very well done and authentic. But I don't think there's any one thing that kind of makes me stick out and say this book is like, oh, this is the thing I want to pull out of this book and say, hold it up and be like, oh yeah, this is the thing that you should definitely check out. It's like, if this is the kind of genre that really appeals to you, because there's a whole kind of horror fantasy. It's mixing a lot of things. There's horror, fantasy, sci-fi, real worlds, kind of satire. If you're into that in an indie comic, then yeah, check it out. But there's no single distinct thing I would hold it up and say this story or this twist or this artwork is so good you can't miss it. So yeah, it's just kind of a middling of the pack for me, I guess.
Well, and I will say, moving to a book that I think the artwork is absolutely worth it. Blasphemous, otherwise is blasphemous, but it's actually spelled blasphemous because for a very sound reason. The newest series from Mirka Andolfo. I'm a huge fan of Sweet Paprika. I adored that series, and like all of Mirka's books, this one like is very much setting the stage in the first issue in a really big way. Like there's a lot of information here, and there's a lot of table setting, but the world is just so different and unique. It has a vibe of its own, just like Paprika's did it. And this one is, talks about, hits you right like in the first 2 pages with an establishing point for the lead character, and then starts to really kind of fill in the world and what it's about. Flashes forward like 600 years later, right? So this one is a world where pop stars are deities, and people are, obviously it's playing on all of the hero worship, star worship that we see in celebrity trends and pop culture and things. But they're literal gods, and they're literal immortal, and there's angels and demons like benefiting from that kind of behind the scenes, right? And so there's this power play there, but there's also the thing we always see about how people can worship something but then also like pick it apart, right? Because you idolize something and you're also sometimes more prone to criticize it, and so it's still like this immortal god but also dealing with that, and then there's all these relationships in play. There's a lot going on here, but I just love her worlds, and I think they always pay off, especially if you kind of give it that first issue to really get sunk in, and then in issues 2 and 3 they really tend to like just hit the gas and move. So I huge fan of this. There's a lot of also obviously plays on religion where that holds, so it's just, there's a lot going on here. The artwork is always stunning. I just always love the aesthetic. So I definitely recommend, check it out. It's going to be something different from anything else you're getting this week. Also, the Six Fingers. Did anyone have a chance to check out the Six Fingers?
I did.
No, I didn't. I want to though.
Damon, what you think?
That is a world that really like throws you into a very established world. This was interesting. It was a little creepy. Yeah, it's interesting because it's a little creepy and there's so much going on in this book. Like it starts you off with with a really violent murder, and then you kind of go off into like this character's life, and then you realize that there's a little bit of a twist at the end. I was like, okay, I don't know how we got here, but things are happening in this very, very strange world where like there's radiation poisoning and mutations. It's strange. I liked it. I couldn't really put my finger on why, but it was just like the mystery of it all. It felt like there's a lot going on. And it just kind of left me on a note where I'm like, I kind of need to know more because I don't know what just happened.
Yeah, I just got the title page, and yeah, that's a lot of questions, a lot of murder. All right,
yeah,
it definitely knows what it's going for and knows its audience. I didn't have a chance to finish it, so that's why I'm like absolving myself of the
Mhm.
conversation, but I definitely agree with you. It's not my typical type of book, but I'm all about like trying to, stretch myself right now. So I'm going for a lot of books that like I typically maybe not wouldn't jump into. And for the most part, I found a lot of them are actually, syncing up with me. But this one, I'm going to finish it because I already started it. But I don't know if I'll stay on. It's one of those, but it's still, I applaud, the change of pace. We got probably time for one more book and then we got to bounce. Kofi Damon, what is there a book this week that you wanted to note before we head out?
I gotta talk about
Um,
Nightwing.
You guys can talk. I'll just say, I know you threw in Rick and Morty, but I just want to say a PSA that I hate when Rick and Morty does comics because trying to read what Rick and Morty do on TV with dialogue is mind-bogglingly obnoxious just to me. I can't do it. So please stop trying to do that to me. And yes, it's a funny deconstruction of Sherlock Holmes because it's in public domain now, but like trying to read their dynamic in words makes me want to jump out the window like Tommen in Game of Thrones. So please stop doing this.
Wow. Oswald's coming. Public domain, baby. You know it's coming. It's happening. Damon, take us out with Nightwing, because we don't get to talk about Nightwing enough on this show. It's been a fantastic run. What did you think of the latest?
I love this run so freaking much. This is potentially, if this nails its landing, one of my all-time favorite comic runs. Period. My favorite run ever is Hawkeye, and this just has like Matt Fraction's Hawkeye, and this just has like the same vibes. It's hopeful. It's just every time I kind of pick up an issue, it just makes me feel good, and I kind of want that when I read superhero comics. Sometimes, or the majority of the time, I just want to feel like a little bit like, yeah, things are great, and that's what I get from these Tom Taylor books. And this one, we're starting to wrap up the end of this run, which breaks my heart because I want this to go on forever, and it's not. Unfortunately, nothing can last forever. So we're at a point now where Dick Grayson, for some reason, we don't know why yet, is unable to leap. He's unable to take a jump off a building and fly through Bloodhaven. We don't really know why yet. And this villain that's been going on around, that's been stealing hearts, is kind of like lingering now through the background. And what I love about just DC in general, I want to talk about this on the Wonder Woman book, but I'll bring it up here, is DC's grander continuity, things tying into each other, has been so good right now. Where something that's happening in an event really does get brought back up into this book. Something going on, Wonder Woman can get brought back up into another book as well. It's just, it really feels like a proper world where things are happening. It's affecting other books, at least a little bit. So onto this, like, I do miss Bruno Redondo's art here. That's such a hard thing to kind of replace, but I think Conrad the artist does pretty well here to kind of like mimic it and replicate it in a way. But this book, it's just feel good, and it's cool to see like Dick and Batman have like good moments together, and like there's still the ongoing trauma of losing parents at a young age still kind of lingers on. It's great. I love this book.
Yeah, I could say a lot of the same things for how I feel about Superman, which also came out this weekend. Is fantastic. Jamal Campbell's artwork is brilliant, but while he's not on currently in the interiors, they're doing a fantastic job finding artists that really cater to that particular chapter of the story and still capture what the theme of the book and the feel and the vibe of the book. So that is all the comics we got time for. There's more. We couldn't cover them. That's how stacked this week is. We hope you enjoy the pull list. Let us know what books you want us to cover, what books you want us to cover more, which ones you're liking. And of course, you can find even more of our content on our Comic Book Nation YouTube page, our main comic book YouTube page, and of course on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any of your chosen podcast platforms. Until next week, deuces. Peace.